In the early 1900s, medicine was in pretty much the same situation as education is today. There were a number of practices, a number of remedies, some of them good, some of them not so good. And it was decided that it had to proceed in a more evidence-based practice. And through scientific method, medicine evolved and became what it is today. Certainly not perfect, but based on evidence and research. And John Hattie in 2009 made an attempt to look at many educational studies. Not all the research in education, but a lot of the research in education to try to identify factors that improve student achievement. So let's take a closer look at this. These are the two books. The one on the left here was more of a research-based book, thick, looking at over 800 meta-analyses. I'll get into that later, but what that means. And then in 2012, Hattie decided to move the research into a more accessible format for teachers. I highly recommend that book. And by that time, he had looked at 900 meta-analyses. So let's take a look at what this book was about. I think we can all agree that we would like to proceed in our actions in teaching through some sort of evidence-supported or research-supported practice. And so we often look at the research study. So if I wanted to use more creativity in my class or be more creative or have students be more creative, I might take a look at a research study. And so I have a grade 5 class and I find the study and it has 550 students. That's a large sample and it's looking at the impact of creativity on learning achievement. Great, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Do a pre-test and then a treatment. I take a look at that treatment. That's something I might want to do in my class, and then a post-test. And yes, behold, there is a statistically significant difference, and the effect size is 1.05. What does that mean? Well, an effect size of 1, according to Hattie, means advancing student achievement by 1 year. Well, I wouldn't mind that. That means grade 4, my grade 4 student is performing at a grade 5 level. Improves rate of learning by 50% or results in a 2-grade leap from a C to an A. That's pretty good. So I can say, okay, creativity and learning, that's a match, and I'm going to go ahead. But then I might pause and say, wait a second, that's only one study. I should look at multiple studies, but that's going to take me a long time. But the good news is there's a meta-analysis. Somebody looked at 67 creativity studies and the impact on student achievement for K to 12 students. It's not exactly my range, but it's sort of close. And so let's see what they found. Well, they found an average effect size of 0.57, not as big as the one that was higher than 1, but still pretty big because it would advance students by about a half a year or improve learning by about 25% or result in a 1-grade leap. So I might conclude that creativity is great, and so I'm going to use that. By the way, the cutoff, according to Hattie, and it's conservative, is 0.4. So that means that anything that has an effect size of less than that is probably not worth considering, or the reverse of that is anything more than 0.4 is worth considering. So great. I know that creativity works. I think that that's something worth introducing into my class. But then I think, well, wait a second. There's probably other factors that are important. I've heard that collaboration is important. So maybe that's a factor I want to use. And I'm not sure about direct instruction, so I want to know, should I continue doing that? So what Hattie did, and this is pretty interesting, is with the help of his team, it's not something you do overnight, he looked at 900 plus meta-analyses. which means we looked at the equivalent of about 60,000 studies, almost 250 million students, and 160,000 effect size. What does that produce? Well, it leads to a fairly long table of average effect size. You sort by effect size and see which factors are most important in contributing to student achievement. So here is a sample table that Petty has brought together. And so let's just take a look. We've got some rank ordering. So according to Petty, when Petty looks at Hattie's results, reciprocal teaching, feedback, whole class instruction or direct instruction, that might be surprising, and strategy training are the top 4 here. And here are the mean effect sizes. Okay, and so this, and there's a long list there of factors that have, on average, been considered good for student achievement. Well, that's pretty impressive because we actually have research now to support possible teaching methods. We no longer have to proceed blindly. Now, if you'd like to look at a nice summary of influential factors, just go to this link here, Richard Petty. It's a chapter from a very good book that he wrote, and I highly recommend that. And you may want to look at John Hattie himself. There's a video about him talking about effect sizes and his work. Now, while Hattie's work is very powerful, it's important to look at the weaknesses of Hattie. And so this kind of work is really interesting because it produces a number that says, hey, this strategy is good. But an average effect size, if you think about it, we looked at creativity, which was 0.57, ignores variation. So we're talking about an average. There may have been effect sizes of 1.5, and there may have been effect sizes of 0.0 or negative effect sizes. So that's quite interesting because what I would like to do is identify why certain factors produce the higher effect sizes and why other factors produce the lower effect sizes. So the details are important in teaching. Uh, as we know, collaboration isn't the same, or creativity isn't the same in every class, and you can do it well and you can do it poorly. So that's important to notice. Hattie is looking at averages that gives us an idea, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not the holy grail in terms of the key methods that have to be looked at. Now, Hattie focuses on student achievement only, and that's important because, for example, you might have remembered last slide or last 2 slides that direct instruction was number 3, I believe. And direct instruction has taken a big hit over the last 10, 15 years because no, you can't do that. You can't just stand up in the front. However, if you're teaching content, new content, and you're focusing on content, which is what student achievement work looks at, well, that's probably a reasonably effective approach. It turns out that it is, that it works well. I'm teaching you this content, I present the content, you memorize the content, and you do well on the test. This is a problem in Hattie's studies, and Hattie notes this. Achievement does not look at the process of learning. So what about looking at collaboration, problem-solving skills, quality of communication, metacognitive skills, critical thinking, what one might consider 21st century skills or higher level skills or modern learning skills? They're difficult to assess, and therefore they don't come out in studies. And so there's some work to be done on actually improving these particular areas. And Hattie's work doesn't say anything about it. If you're interested in looking more at that in modern learning, I highly recommend Will Richardson's very entertaining, engaging, and challenging video and looking at the 10 principles of modern learning.